Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, goodness knows, to all of our friends that are Zooming in today. And welcome to Church in Ocean Park. We are so glad to be here. And it's first Sunday of Advent in the Christian calendar. And we're just a couple days after Bodhi Day. And today we're going to be talking about Tina Turner. Oh, it's an exciting day. So, ready to sing?
Yes.
All righty. And we need you to help us, please. So I'll say, oh, day, and you all say, yonder come day. Let me hear you sing that. Sit up tall, please. Breathing. And we'll say, yonder come day. Try that. Here we go. Yonder come day. Ooh. And then I'll say, oh, day. And you say again, yonder come day. And then I'll say, oh, day. And here's this last one. Yonder come day, let it roll into my soul. Yonder come day. Do that let it roll part. Here we go. Let it roll into my soul. Yonder come day. That was pretty good. Are you ready, choir?
Yes.
Are you ready, everybody else? That was okay. Are you ready? All right, here we go. Welcome to Church in Ocean Park. Are you ready on Zoom? We're so glad you're here. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul. Yonder come day. Let's do that one again. Oh, day. Oh, day. Oh, day, yonder come day, let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. It's a glorious day, a glorious day, a glorious day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Oh, day, oh, day. Oh, day, yonder come day, let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. It's a Bodhi day, a Bodhi day. It's a Bodhi day, yonder come day, let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Oh, day, oh, day. Oh, day, let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Oh, day, oh, day, oh, day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Say that one more time. Oh, day, oh, day. Oh, day, let it roll in my soul, yonder come day. I said, let it roll, yonder come day. One more time. I said, let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Welcome to Church in Ocean Park. Woo. All right.
Welcome. Welcome to Church in Ocean Park. You are welcome. If you are here, you are welcome. If you are there, you are welcome anywhere. You are welcome if you like bananas. You are welcome if you hate bananas. You are welcome if you like to go bananas. You are welcome if you are an apple. You are welcome if you are an orange. We welcome the noble persimmon, the juicy pomegranate, the mythic fig. We have room. Come on in.
Welcome to the Church in Ocean Park. Yes. So I'm Janet McKithen. I'm the minister here, and I also welcome you to the church in Ocean Park. And as Dr. Kim said, we are trying a new thing over and over again every Sunday. This Sunday, we're facing the screen because our message is from the screen this morning. But I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm really glad that they're there. I'm really glad that we can do this in a hybrid form so that we're able to reach a lot of different people. It's we're very lucky to be able to do that. Yesterday, we had an amazing event here. The Santa Monica Conservancy had their 20th anniversary, and they celebrated our 100th anniversary. Yesterday, this church was 100 years old. And so, and we're still standing. I mean, it did take a while for us, but we are still standing, and we do have some new things to prove it. So welcome to the church in Ocean Park. We do begin with acknowledging that most of us right now are sitting on stolen land. In Santa Monica here, we're sitting on land that was violently taken from the Chumash, the Quiche, and the Tongva peoples. We acknowledge the harms of genocide, forced assimilation, enslavement, and destruction at the hands of settler U.S. colonialism. We also acknowledge that our communities and country was built on the backs of people who were stolen from Africa, placed into bondage, and forced into labor. We acknowledge that we benefit from that labor that has never been repaid. In our acknowledgement, let us commit ourselves to healing by helping create a more just and equitable world through the struggle of changing how we do things that we think are normal, but are actually systemically hurting people. Let us take a moment in our acknowledgement. We all have biases that we come with, no matter how hard we try not to. And so we all look at it a different lens. And the church in Ocean Park, there's no one person who speaks for the entirety of the church. And so if you hear something that you disagree with, know that that person does not speak for the church in Ocean Park, and that your voice is just as important, no matter if you just walked in here for the first time or you've been here for a very long time. Your voice is just as important as the person who spoke. So welcome to the church in Ocean Park. And we center ourselves every Sunday with the Thich Nhat Hanh chant. I have arrived, I am home, in the here, and then the now, 3 times. I have arrived, I am home, in the here, and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here, and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here, and in the.
Today is our first Sunday in Advent, and we light the first candle. We light one candle in the midst of all the darkness of the world, as well as darkness in our own lives at times. And so this lighted candle symbolizes hope, the hope God offers to our world. It is the prophet's candle. It is also called the prophet's candle, remembering Isaiah's prophecy in Isaiah chapter 7 and verse 14 of the Old Testament in the Christian Bible, who prophesies that a virgin will give birth to a child who would be the Redeemer, Emmanuel, God with us. We hope for the best, even in times of adversity. we carry on in the hope that all must be well, that all will be well. And we are encouraged by the poem of Alexander Pope when he wrote, "Hope springs eternal in the human breast." Our theme is hope.
Well, yes, I like how you said that, Reverend Janet, about how we're trying something new again and again, and again each time. So we're figuring it out bit by bit, and that can be exciting, it can be frustrating, and it can be everything else in between. But we figured that for today, our guest speaker is someone that you have heard before, and that is, well, now he is Dr. Ralph Craig III. Now, when we first met Ralph, he was, I first met him, and of course, Chris Chappell and Maureen have known him for a long time as well, but at LMU, at Loyola Marymount. So it's fantastic to get to know him there. And then he went into PhD school. He went to Stanford, where he completed his doctorate. That deserves a hand right there. Yes, indeed. And he's originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and he got his bachelor's. Okay, he got his bachelor's from LMU, and he specializes in Buddhism with a focus on South Asian Buddhism and American Buddhism. His research interests include comparative religion and popular culture, literature, and African American studies. And what's really exciting is that his book just came out less than a month ago called Dancing in My Dreams. And this is his book. It is a spiritual biography of Tina Turner. I know, it's really amazing. And let's see, who publishes this? I mean, you can get it on, well, the big A carries it, you know who I mean. But it's great that this book is out. And I'd like to read just a little bit from the book before we have our message from Ralph Craig III, Dr. Ralph. Now, this is a quote from Tina Turner. And she says, "When I'm ready, I will devote all my time to that. I'll tell what I've learned. Many of you will listen, and some of you will hear." Though for much of her life and career, Tina Turner did not consider herself a spiritual or religious teacher. The above epigraph, quoted in the epilogue of her 1986 autobiography entitled I, Tina, shows that Turner believed she would eventually be a religious teacher. Until her retirement from live performing, Turner had limited herself to discussing her beliefs and practices in interviews given amid the promotion of her work. Prior to writing I, Tina, Turner stated that while success had been useful to her and her loved ones, and while most of her earthly dreams had come true, she knew that singing and dancing weren't the fulfillment of her destiny. Instead, she wanted to teach about spirituality. She clarified, though, that since her career was still in bloom, she would not confuse performing and spiritual teaching. And yet, she nonetheless hoped that I, Tina, contained a message that is, quote, "The real power behind whatever success I have now is something I found within myself, something that is in all of us. I think a little piece of God is just waiting to be discovered. End quote. She then offers the prescription to her readers that they purge themselves of anything holding them back for the sake of liberating their true selves. And so she was, in fact, teaching already. Amen to that. Yet she did not explicitly consider herself a religious teacher until the release of the first album called Beyond. And maybe Ralph will tell us a little bit about that series. So I'll end this reading with another quote from Tina Turner. Because in the first lines, and the first time you hear her voice in that album entitled Beyond, she speaks in a low register, reminiscent of the opening lines of Proud Mary. Discussing in chapter 2 that, and in the first line, she says, nothing lasts forever. No one lives forever. The flower that fades and dies, winter passes and spring comes. Embrace the cycle of life. That is the greatest love. So, friends, we are lucky to have someone familiar to all of us here. So please continue to welcome Dr. Ralph Craig III. Woo-hoo!
Good morning, good morning. And thank you, Dr. Harris, for that introduction. And thank you to the performers and Dr. Chappell and everyone. In thinking about this book, my favorite part of this book is in the acknowledgments on page 6 of the acknowledgments, the Roman numeral, 16 of the acknowledgments. I got to say, other teachers have served as mentors and inspirations over the years, Christopher and Maureen Chappell, and I am endlessly grateful for the mentorship of Kim R. Harris. All of them have supported me in my journey, pushing, inspiring, and challenging me. So that's actually my favorite part of this book. And I opened on the acknowledgements page or the dedications page, I wrote, all of my ancestors and these teachers, these mentors, have taught me the meaning of Nichiren Daishonen's maxim, quote, if one lights a fire for others, one will brighten one's own way. So Chris and Maureen, Dr. Harris, and others have all brightened my way for me. And I'm very grateful to see them on here and that I got the chance to thank them in the book. When I wrote the book, I was thinking about, or what prompted the book after the initial idea came about and the publisher approached me. I originally said no to her. I just thought, it's not what I'm focused on. It's, writing a book on Tina Turner was not my plan. And I was working on my dissertation at that time, which was a different topic. And they approached me again and I said no. And then I went to see the movie Harriet in theaters. And I was sitting there with my wife, Kelly, and one of my colleagues. And as the credits rolled to the film Harriet, I thought to myself, I'm meant to tell a story like this. I grew up hearing about, of course, in school and other things, Harriet Tubman, but I didn't know anything about her spiritual life, right? Her kind of deeply visionary spiritual life. And I thought to myself, there are many people who we know, and many figures who we know in one way, but don't understand the kind of depths of their spiritual and religious life. And so as I started to think about Tina Turner, then I started to link three moments together in my mind. The first, in 1993, in a May 1993 Vanity Fair article, Tina Turner wrote that she considered herself Buddhist Baptist and that it was all deeply connected, right? She could relate to the 10 Commandments and the 10 Worlds, which is a Buddhist concept. She could relate to these easily and that it was all connected if you contacted the subconscious mind. And she said that as a chanter, that's how she contacts her subconscious mind. And then in 1997, February 1997, she was interviewed on Larry King Live on CNN. And in that interview, she was asked about her faith, and she described her Buddhist practice, gave a demonstration of that practice. And at the end of that interview, she talked about the way that chanting made the chakras resonate, which contacts the subconscious mind. She talked about her views, her vision for the 21st century, and her belief that she in her past life was an Egyptian queen. And then in 2003, she met the now late movie director Ismail Merchant, and they were working on a film together called The Goddess. And he went to meet her in Zurich, Switzerland at her home. And she told him that the night before she had had a dream, or rather a few days before, she had had a dream that someone would come into her life and bring a new story into her life. And that story would mark this change for her towards kind of religious teaching and religious output, you might say. So I link these three moments together, and I argue in the book, right, that this displays the range of Tina Turner's spiritual life, her Black Baptist upbringing, her eventual engagement with metaphysical religious ideas and ideas about kind of harmonic correspondence between the self, the microcosm, and the macrocosm, the universe, and the language of chakras therein. Of course, heavily drawing upon Eastern ideas, Eastern religious ideas. And then her conversion to Buddhism, beginning in 1973, with her Buddhist practice beginning in 1973. And finally, then into the 21st century, when she begins to orient her output towards sharing a religious message. So these three moments then show the range of Tina Turner's spiritual life, and I go through that range in the book. But I think one of the things that's most interesting, as Dr. Harris brought up, was these albums called the Beyond albums. The first album called Beyond Buddhist and Christian Prayers. The second album, that was in 2009. The second album called Children Beyond, which came out in 2011. And then the third album that she participated on called Love Within, Beyond Love Within. And then she also participated on the fourth Beyond album called Awakening Beyond. But by that point, she was very sick, so she did not participate on any more of the Beyond albums. But on these albums, much of her recorded output to that point was what you might call secular, right? You know, kind of songs like what's that we all know her for, Proud Mary, What's Love Got to Do with It, Simply the Best, and other Wildest Dreams and other such songs. But by 2009, when she retired from live performing, she then began to turn her attention to sharing her religious teachings and her religious message. And so on the first Beyond album, she is chanting. She's doing the chants and recitations from the Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhist tradition that is chanting the title of the Lotus Sutra and chapters of the Lotus Sutra. And that chanting is interwoven with Christian prayers and prayers drawn from Tibetan Buddhist traditions as well. On the next Beyond album, she is chanting Sanskrit mantras and also some Islamic prayers with a children's choir composed of 30 children from different countries. And then on the third Beyond album, she returns to her Baptist roots and she sings Amazing Grace, the kind of gospel blues song, Motherless Child, a version of which she wrote. Many people have done versions of this song, and she wrote her own version of that song in 1968. So she returns to that recording, again in the gospel blues tradition. And she also recites the Lord's Prayer and some other prayers. So these, and then on the fourth Beyond album, she recites the Heart Sutra in English. So on these four albums, she again displays this impressive range of her religious life. And we have to see that, I argue in the book, in the context of the work of a scholar named Rima Vesely Flad, who wrote the book Black Buddhists and the Black Radical Tradition, where in which Dr. Vesely Flad argues that for many African American Buddhists, they often do not discard the religious traditions that they grew up with. They often incorporate those traditions into their practice of Buddhism. And we certainly see that with Tina Turner. Though she did convert to Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhism, she officially had her the ceremony that marks your conversion into that tradition, which is the receiving of a scroll. She had that ceremony in August 1976, August 8th, 1976. So she officially converted to Buddhism. Like, she was a Buddhist, but at the same time, she never forsook the language and indeed some of the practices that come from her Black Baptist upbringing. So when we look at a figure like Tina Turner, and I argue that there are many others like her out there, we have to understand their religious authority in the context of their so-called secular output, but also in the context of the full range of their religious life and experience. And I'm endlessly fascinated by figures like her who are doing this. And then I discovered, I don't know how long I have, Dr. Harris, but I would just say that in doing the research for the book, right, as a researcher, the question is always, yes, a person voices these intentions or expresses their determination, as Tina Turner did, to teach. But in order to teach, there must be those who are being taught, right? So I wondered, are there those who respond and responded to her religious and spiritual aspirations? And indeed, I found that there were. In the comments on YouTube, interviews that I conducted, even when I saw her live in concert back in 2008, and so on and so forth, people voiced that she actually changed their and inspired their religious life. And I found that there were actually people out there who took her as their spiritual teacher, right? Who took Tina Turner, a woman who they had never met, most of them had never met, only seen her live or only seen, in some instances, not even seen her live themselves, but seen her videos and read her writings. Those people take her as their spiritual teacher, right? So these people are then, I argue, responding to her determination to be a spiritual teacher. And I think that we should, going forward, pay attention to these people, to, right, particularly the religious labors of African American women like Tina Turner, who aspire to be teachers, take on religious authority for themselves, and stake a claim in that by writing, by singing, speaking out, and dancing, as Tina Turner did.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've heard you speak about her so often, and every time I learn more and more. So thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. And thank you. And thank you so much, Dr. Ralph Craig, as well. We talk a lot about being multi-religious in ourselves. And that's exactly what he was describing about Tina Turner. She's more than one religion in herself. And I think most people, many people are. And the sad thing is when somebody feels like they need to leave part of themselves at the door when they come into a place, a religious institution or organization. So I appreciate that much about your book and about Tina Turner. I didn't know that about Tina Turner. I only knew her wonderful songs. My first karaoke song was "What Does Love Got to Do with It?" Just a little tidbit you'd wanted to know. But now's the time for sharing, so I just shared. And if you have a question or you'd like to make a comment, doesn't matter if this is your first time or you've been around for a very long time. If you have a comment, let me know.
Yes, my name is Craig Ali, and I've had a personal experience also with Buddhism. So I'll preference my question based on something that I've learned, as well as an observance that we're seeing. We as African Americans are filled with all kinds of hostilities towards us. And in looking at the life of Tina Turner, I think she invoked something that I also knew as a Buddhist principle of turning poison into medicine. And as we go forward, if you could expound on essentially how that is, and how that could be applied in dealing with folks that want to do us harm, I think that would be most appreciative as a guiding principle.
Do you have a comment, Dr. Ralph?
Yes, thank you, Craig Ali, for that. The principle of changing poison into medicine, which I actually discuss in chapter 6 of the book, because Tina Turner considered that to be the theme of her life. And I was actually fortunate to be invited by Tina's team to be present at the Broadway premiere of Tina the Musical, where Tina herself was. And that was actually the final time that Tina Turner appeared physically in public, and also the final time that she was ever in the United States. And that was November 2019. And she was, even then, she was very, very ill, but radiant as ever. And she shared on stage that her life was like poison that turned to medicine. And this principle comes out of Nichiren Buddhism, and it Hindoku Iyaku in Japanese. And it essentially means that rather than seeing the problems, the suffering, the stuff of life as something that you triumph despite, instead that you can turn those problems and sufferings and whatnot, the poison of life, that you can turn that into medicine, right? That you can use that to actually fuel yourself and go on. And Tina Turner exemplified that in the way that she began slowly at first in 1981, and then of course by 1986 sharing her full story, but slowly began to tell her story at a time when the sufferings of many women, and particularly many Black women, were not being publicly shared. That she was one of the first in many ways to publicly share all that she experienced, both in her private life, but also as a Black woman in America, and the struggles that she faced in the music business and so on and so forth. So she used that, the poison, right, and turned that into this story of victory, triumph, and hope for all. And that comes directly out of the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin, where the Buddha is said to be like a great physician that is able to turn poison into medicine. So thank you for raising that concept.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else?
I'm Jean. Is that on? Not live? There it is. Okay. Thank you for today. I love the concepts of Buddhism when I hear about them and read about them, but I haven't really put them together for myself. Could you talk about chanting, the purpose of chanting, the effects of chanting for you, and what are some of the things that you chant? Are they prayers? Are they songs? That's my question.
Thank you for that question. Chanting, well, for the Nichiren Buddhist tradition, the Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhist tradition that Tina Turner is a part of, the SGI chants Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, which is it's a pronunciation of the title of the Lotus Sutra in Chinese and Japanese, with the suffix or prefix by nam, which is a contraction of the Sanskrit namaha or namas, which means like to bow to or to devote oneself to. So the chant then Nam Myoho Renge Kyo means homage or devotion to the wonderful dharma of the Lotus Sutra, you might say. And then in that tradition, they chant parts of the Lotus Sutra, chapter 2, which kind of outlines the reality of Buddhahood and what that looks like for Buddhists. And then chapter 16, which talks about the kind of eternal lifespan of the Buddha. So that's what they're chanting. But more than that, they understand that by chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, it actualizes their potential for Buddhahood, right? So that Nam Myoho Renge Kyo becomes, in that tradition, the name of awakening itself, right? And to chant those words is to experience the kind of emergence of one's own Buddha nature. That's how they understand it in that tradition. It's quite powerful. I remember my first time that I ever attended a Soka Gakkai Buddhist meeting, which is in 1999, and they were chanting for a couple hours actually, and I went in to the hall, and they were all chanting facing the altar in the front, and I just remember being kind of rocked by the experience. It's a very visceral, embodied experience, and it was something that for Tina Turner was very deep. I mean, she was chanting, particularly in the early days of her Buddhist practice, she was chanting sometimes 4 hours a day. Her and the late Wayne Shorter's first wife, Anna Maria Shorter, her and Tina Turner were very close. And she stayed with Anna Maria Shorter and also Anna Maria's sister, Maria Lucian, who is still alive. Tina Turner stayed with them when she left her first husband, Ike Turner. And so her and Anna Maria would chant sometimes 4 hours a day. And when you do that, from my own experience, when you chant that long, it is a very powerful experience, and it sharpens your intuition, heightens your awareness. And Tina said, if I may, then I can just stop there with this question. But Tina was asked in an interview, what is beyond, right? Tina had these albums called Beyond. So what does beyond mean to you? What does it refer to? And Tina Turner's response was, and I quote here, she says, "Oh, that's a deep question. Let's start with meditation. There's a stage in practice where you don't faint, you don't black out, but you are in a space. And in the space, you are able to stop the conscious mind, the one that constantly talks and gives you all kinds of information from your eyes, your ears, and your nose, right? Your senses. When you're able to get into that space, that is beyond. That's where you find truth. In this stage of my life, I personally believe that you get truth from your subconscious mind. And by meditating, you get into the subconscious mind. Meditation opens a space I call beyond," end quote. And I argue in the book that that kind of thinking comes from this deep chanting practice that she had for many years. And I was once reading something that Dr. Chris Chappell wrote, and he was talking about attending I'm not sure, and Chris is on here, so maybe he can clarify, but I'm not sure if it was a fire ceremony or something, but they were chanting Sanskrit prayers and mantras for 3 hours or so. And he was kind of talking about the sensory experience of that. So it's a very deep, deep practices to chant in those ways for those extended periods of time.
Great. Thank you so much.
Not really a question, it's just a thought, just a THOT thought. I understand that she did not like the song at first, the same song that you were talking about. What's love got to do with it? She didn't like the words at all, and she didn't want to sing it at all. And even while she was singing it, she was, in a sense, struggling against the concept of the song. She was struggling against it. And I think it is this struggle that sort of demonstrated her deep feeling and the consciousness of the battle that people who listened to the song and saw her singing were able to vibrate with it, you know, to come to sync with it. So I was wondering if her music on the whole, if her singing on the whole was a form of chant, was a form of chant in order to illustrate the struggle that she was going through in her life. And that is why her music was so meaningful to people in their own struggles.
I am so glad you said that. Yeah, I'm right there with you, and Tina herself was right there with you. She said that singing was a spiritual practice. She said, I quote again, she said, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is a song. In the Soka Gakkai tradition, we are taught how to sing it. It is a sound and a rhythm, and it touches a place inside you. Sorry. That place we try to reach is the subconscious mind. I believe that it is the highest place, and if you communicate with it, that is when you receive information on what to do. Singing a song can make you cry. Singing a song can make you happy. That's spirit, the spirit inside of you. And meditation and praying and singing change your spirit into something positive. And if it is already positive, it makes it better. So she saw singing as a spiritual practice, regardless of what she was singing. On the song, What's Love Got to Do with It? It is, yes, she did not like the song. She did not like the words and the message. And she thought, just on every level, she thought it was when it was brought to her, it was written by a man named Terry Britton. And it was originally offered to Cliff Richard, and he passed on it. Then it was offered to Donna Summer, and she passed on it. And it was brought to Tina Turner's manager, and he thought it was a great song. I thought it had the potential to be a hit. And as Tina Turner listened to the demo and the words, she thought, it's a pop song. I don't sing pop music. So, she was used to rhythm and blues and rock and soul, and she didn't like that it was a pop song. And then when she read the lyrics, her first response was, what does this even mean? Love has everything to do with everything. And her second memoir that came out in 2018, that book is called My Love Story. So she, for her, love was everything. So to sing a song and say, what does love have to do with it? What's love got to do with it? She really did not like that at all. But that is another instance, back to Craig Ali's comment, that was another instance for her. And she writes about this in her 2020 memoir, Happiness Becomes You. That was another instance for her of changing poison into medicine. But if you listen to the song, she sings it in this kind of a low growl. She actually sung it that way as a kind of, Tina Turner could be petty, you know. She sung it that way as a kind of dig at the man who wrote the song, who was standing there in the studio as well. She kind of sung it in this kind of growl, getting back, you know, kind of like, if I'm going to have to sing this song, I'm going to sing it in this kind of raspy growl. But obviously the song was a #1 hit and, you know, won record of the year. So an instance of changing poison into medicine. But absolutely for her, singing was a spiritual practice. And I think that more attention could be paid across traditions, particularly in Buddhist traditions, and scholarship on Buddhist traditions. There is a book by a man named Guy Beck called Sonic Theology, and that book is about the importance of sound in Hinduism. But I think that could equally apply to Buddhism, that sound and embodied recitation is so important. And the last thing I'll say from my personal experience, in some of the first Sanskrit reading classes that I ever took with Chris Chappell, I kind of arrived in Los Angeles in 2013 and emailed Dr. Chappell out of the blue. And he invited me to come to this kind of open reading group that he was doing, which I think was on Tuesdays or something. And the kind of first thing they would do in this reading class is they would chant, they would speak whatever verses they were translating. And that sense of togetherness, I think many people who participated in that reading class often speak about or have spoken about the kind of sense of camaraderie and togetherness and community that comes out of that. And here in the church in Ocean Park, right, the singing and the songs of joining in. Tina Turner participated in that and saw her concerts as a way of fostering that.
So thank you so much. It's great to hear you speak once again, of course. You mentioned to me the other day that there has been a great loss in the Soka Gakkai international community. And so would you just tell us a little bit about that and, you know, how it came to the United States and where the community is right now in the face of this loss?
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Yeah, in this year, right, first in March in March of this year, Wayne Shorter, who is a longtime Soka Gakkai member and obviously a jazz icon, and I would argue one of America's legends and a global legend. Wayne passed away. He was 89, but you know, Wayne Shorter passed away. And then, of course, in May, on May 24th, Tina Turner passed away, right? Another longtime Soka Gakkai member. And then on the evening of November 15th, this month, a couple weeks ago, Daisaku Ikeda, the 95-year-old leader and president of Soka Gakkai International, and the mentor for Tina Turner, for Wayne Shorter, for many members of that organization, he passed away suddenly at his home of natural causes, but suddenly at his home in Tokyo. So the Soka Gakkai community has lost many major figures, including its leader, you know, this year. And in the face of that loss, I think many Soka Gakkai members around the world are reckoning with what it means to live in this, as they call it, this new era, right? Where in his Daisaku Ikeda's last messages, the poems that he wrote towards November 18th is a big day in the Soka Gakkai. It is the day that they commemorate their founding. And he wrote these poems that were meant to be shared on November 18th, and he wrote them sometime around November 11th or 12th. So these constitute, in a way, his final messages. And one of them, he says, in one of those messages, he says, based on the mystic, I quote, based on the mystic law, one person's inner transformation is an example for all. Let us, you and I, my friends, share this light of hope with everyone. My dear young friends around the world, as the wise, guiding eyes of peace summon up the courage of a lion king to win victory after victory. Right? These are essentially some of his final words. So Soka Gakkai members are sitting with that right? And he led the organization. Soka Gakkai, he led from, as its third president, from 1960 to 1979. And then when SGI, the global organization, was founded in 1975, he was the founder and only president of that organization. So for many years, right, since 1960, he has led this organization and this movement. So the community is reckoning with that, and that, of course, is very challenging. And it has also this aging membership, you know, in a very real way. Some of the biggest names associated with the organization are in their late 70s, 80s, even 90s. So it's very, very difficult time for them. I was at November 19th. I gave the eulogy at Tina Turner's memorial service. They had her official memorial service was a Buddhist memorial service, and I was asked to give the eulogy at that, and I did that in Los Angeles. That was on November 19th. Right, I had just heard, it had become public knowledge that Daisaku Ikeda had passed away on November 18th. That knowledge became public. So, you know, members around the world are feeling that loss. But at the same time, last thing I'll say about that, Dr. Harris, at the same time, right, the Nichiren Daishonin, the kind of founder of Nichiren Buddhism, believed that by chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, those who chant it become one with each other throughout time and space. And so I was recently asked, right, by a woman reached out to me who said that Tina Turner was her guiding light, and even 6 months after Tina Turner's death, she is struggling to come to terms with Tina Turner's death. And, you know, how can she still connect with Tina Turner? And I said what Daisaku Ikeda said just before his passing, what Nichiren Daishonin said some 800 years ago, and what Wayne Shorter said, his final words were about chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, that if you chant those words that they chanted, you can connect to their legacy, right, anytime. And I view this for myself personally in the same way that, you know, I put in the acknowledgments or the dedication of my book, the first person listed is my grandmother, Aline Bonds, who we lovingly called my dear. My father is also in that list. And I miss my grandmother immensely. I think about her almost every day, but I can connect to her as my ancestor anytime. You know, anytime I say the Lord's Prayer, which she said throughout the day, every day for her entire life. In so doing, I'm saying the words that she said and connecting to her. So I think members around the world are trying to connect to the legacy of people like Daisaku Ikeda by reading his words and chanting what he chanted.
Thank you so much. And I think that we really appreciate all that you've shared. One of the things that comes to me is that what you were talking about in terms of being out of your body and not hearing all this noise all the time when you chant, that happened to me in Sweat Lodge, because you can't be in your physical body, or at least I couldn't be in my physical body and survive. It's too hot. Like if I just sat there and then was like thinking about how my body is, I would be too hot to stay in there. And so some people, you know, then ego comes and different things come and speak to you, but you're not really in the same frame of mind. I mean, you're in a different spiritual realm, and I think that's what you're talking about with chanting. But I think that there are many different ways to get in a place like that. Sometimes some religious traditions fast, and I think if you fast for a number of days or weeks, that happens as well. That happens with various singing. And we do chants here too, and we don't do them for 3 hours. We have a very short attention span, but we do have the moments of silence. And actually, we're going to have a moment of silence right now. And then it's going to be broken with a song. But first, we want to say thank you to Dr. Ralph Craig. Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll
you.
have a
Thank you
moment of silence, and Dr. Kim will open with a song.
Peace, 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 peace. Wars have been and wars must cease. We must learn to live together. Peace, peace, peace. Peace, 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 peace. Wars have been and wars must cease. We must learn to live together. Peace, peace, peace. Peace, 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 peace. Wars have been and wars must cease. We must learn to live together. Peace, peace, peace.